Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Path to Individualization, Improving the ROI from Your Personalization Investment. I'm Adam Blair, the editor of Retail Touchpoints, and I'll be moderating today's session. Retailers, along with a wide range of other businesses, consistently identify personalization as a top priority for meeting consumer expectations. But many struggle with some of the basics involved in implementing personalization solutions, everything from creating a roadmap to simply getting such programs off the ground. During today's web session, we'll get a practical guide for developing and deploying successful personalization programs that are based on both your team's aspirations and your customers' demands. Our speakers today will be sharing lots of information about this topic, and we encourage you to share some of your own data points and takeaways on Twitter. Social information from me and our speakers is available on this slide. The session is part of the 2020 Connected Consumer Series. During the series, attendees have the opportunity to hear from leading industry experts discussing the most important topics on retailers' minds today. By registering for one session, attendees will have access to all complimentary presentations, live and on demand. For those of you who may be new to Retail Touchpoints, here's a quick overview. We're an all-digital media company publishing 2 weekly email newsletters, daily news, special reports, and multimedia presentations. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our newsletter. We welcome input and feedback through traditional means, phone and email, as well as social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Our website address is www.retailtouchpoints.com. Today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. Right now, you should be viewing the On24 dashboard, which shows the live viewing screen. By clicking on the Questions widget on the right-hand side of the screen, you can type in questions during the live presentation and press Submit. You can also find a widget named Resources under Questions. Here you can download assets our presenters have provided. All you have to do is click on the resource, and it will automatically download. Just a few housekeeping details. The total presentation is slated for about 40 minutes with time for live questions at the end. Again, I encourage you to submit those questions as they come to mind so they come to the top during the Q&A session. We'll get to as many questions as we can. I also encourage you to follow up with our speakers on social media if you want to discuss some of the session's takeaways. Also, the webinar is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an archive link to the presentation to go back and review or share with colleagues. Now a little bit about our speakers. Mike Davidson is Executive Creative Director at Capgemini's Commerce Design Practice. He works with global brands to execute commerce strategies and works to advance their organizational maturity across customer research, design thinking, content, and personalization. Aaron McElway is a Senior Digital Consultant at Capgemini's DCX NA practice. Aaron has worked in digital data consulting for the past 8 years with a focus on data, testing, and personalization. She works hand in hand with brands to develop their personalization programs, build cross-channel personalization strategies, and manage their data roadmaps. Welcome to both speakers.
Hi everyone, this is Mike. If you're not familiar with Capgemini, Capgemini is a customer experience agency that blends digital services, management consulting, and systems integration to help clients drive revenue growth and long-term success. So if you have any of these needs, please let us know how we can help you out. As a bit of an overview, going back to what Adam said, personalization is recognized as a top priority for most businesses. That said, it's a complex capability that demands a lot from business. As we work with brands day in and day out, we see that pretty much all companies struggle to make meaningful progress in this area. So this has been an area of focus for us to develop maturity models and roadmaps. So this presentation is our guide with some guiding principles for building a personalization roadmap, and we hope you find it helpful.
Thanks, Mike. As we get into this, I just wanted to level set on personalization. So there are multiple definitions for personalization, and each brand seems to find their own definition of personalization. For the moment of this presentation, we're going to speak about personalization as the practice of serving your customers more effectively by using data to meet your customers' ever-changing needs and expectations. After working with clients, we've identified some key points that we find as a common thread with brands experiencing successes and struggling a bit to reach their personalization goals. When we're looking at successes, brands that have succeeded in personalization have a clear business objective and goals that they're working towards when referring to personalization. They also have really efficient cross-functional work streams. They have clean, unified data sources, and they have a tech stack that allows them to reach their business goals in reference to personalization. When we're speaking about points of friction or points of failure, looking at data or using data that is disjointed, incomplete, or dirty is typically a red flag. Also, working with siloed work streams or departments that aren't used to working together or working cross-functionally. And then also a ping-ponged approach to personalization strategy with no clear direction or goal in mind when planning out your personalization strategy.
Great. So to ground our approach, we defined specific roadmap strategies for each of these pillars, being experience, organization, and technology. So these are key focus points for us as we build roadmaps and work with organizations to build their personalization programs. All of them need to complement each other as your roadmap evolves. So you start with this approach and then you think about how each one of these evolves together and how they complement each other as they evolve. And, you know, because we are focused really on the user and the consumers, right? Personalization shouldn't just be a means to drive conversion, but really should be a means to solve consumers' problems, provide more relevant experiences, and provide value to them. So we place them in the center of these strategies and always kind of work around them to make sure that we're focused on them as an individual and the consumer. So our maturity model that we have here essentially defines a crawl, walk, run approach to personalization. So this is the foundational kind of view of how we start to roadmap with our brands. The early stages focus on easier to accomplish capabilities. The data is easier to acquire. The experiences are easier to act upon. And then we start to overlay our pillars of experience and organization and technology to provide clear goals for each step. As you evolve, the goals for each become, you know, essentially more challenging across both the experience, the organization, and technology needs. So starting with experience, for step one, you know, we ask basic questions like, you know, can you identify unique customer intent? Can you identify where they are in the purchase stage? Is it an early stage of research and discovery, or is it a late stage of product consideration and detailed specifications? Can you take them from a specific marketing point and land them on a landing page within your site and essentially connect that marketing story from the marketing point into the experience of the site? You know, we see as we work with brands that a lot of brands struggle with that first step of connecting the story from marketing into the site and making that relevant. The result is a lot of inflated bounce rates and lost conversion there. So moving from step one, you need to really kind of understand that journey in more detail. So at each step from 1 to 2 to 3 into 4, right, you're continuing to add granularity to that customer picture and add granularity to those specific journeys along that path, eventually leading to, you know, omni-channel understanding of how a consumer is moving from one channel to the next, and how can we provide personalization that's connected across them.
Similar with the organization piece, When you're first starting out in that step 1 or step 2, you really want to use that time to look at your existing organizational structure and the people you already have in place that know your data, know your customers, know the tools that you're using, and really leverage your existing organizational infrastructure to execute on some of these level 1 and level 2 personalization campaigns. And as you move up through the maturity model, you can start using some of those learnings that have come out of your foundational pieces of where are the roadblocks, where are the bottlenecks in your process coming from. Do you have certain resources that may be overwhelmed by the work that are coming out? And use that information to really power your more mature stages of personalization, to focus on true data analysis to understand not only your users, but the results that are coming out of your personalization campaigns. And then also put some of that knowledge that came out of the foundational steps into building out a more robust data source to leverage during the personalization campaigns, meaning do you have the correct data to use, and who are the people, the resources that are managing this data, ensuring the data is accurate and clean to be used during those steps 3, 4, and 5 of your maturity model. So really looking at your organizational structure from more of a simple approach of using the resources you have available to you while planning ahead, understanding that the skill set and the quantity of resources that you need to maximize your personalization campaigns could change once you get a little bit more mature in your practice. And then with technology, a similar story can be told where at the very beginning you may have very limited amount of data that is siloed across different systems. You have your email platform, you have your e-commerce platform, so on and so forth, that all may have its own data associated with it. They may not necessarily talk to each other, but really leveraging what you do have to get some proof of concept experiences off the ground. So take a good look at what you do have, inform your program with what type of data you're going to need to achieve or warehouse to maximize some of that personalization work that you will be doing later on in your maturity model. So as you navigate through your maturity model, it's really about understanding the data that you have on hand, the accessibility of that data, and then also how the data can be used across your different technology stack. So just making sure that as you mature, we're taking that into account so you can fulfill some of those more mature personalization strategies. A good example of this is a lot of times we have brands that come to us that may have started down their personalization path and look to achieve an experience that they may not have, they may not be able to achieve due to their organizational or technology resources. So where they're sitting at maybe a level 1 or 2 on the organizational and technology track, their experiences that they're looking to achieve is really a 4 or a 5. And we see that this gap in understanding or this gap in preparation is something that really slows down a personalization program and is the first red flag to a personalization program maybe running into a speed bump. An example of this is a personalization campaign that we've recently helped out with, where the client or the brand really wanted to do something fairly simple, or sound fairly simple, where they wanted to leverage their existing creative placements across multiple touch points that offered credit card sign-up creative. They wanted to target everyone that currently had a credit card with a different type of messaging. So in this case, they wanted to target them with a hotel upsell. So in this situation that seemed fairly simple, it really turned out to be much more difficult, and that was because of the lack of data that the company had on hand. And really what was needed to execute this was to understand where each of the creative pieces were located across all of your channels. So where was that credit card sign up located? Then you had to, in real time, understand what users on your site or in your email or whatever platform you're looking at, the channel we were looking at, who were they in real time that it had an existing credit card or was an existing credit card holder. And then we needed to have resources available to create this mass amount of creative that was going to be needed to fill various size promotion slots, various placements across all these different touch points. And then also we needed to have multiple teams work together to deploy this personalization campaign at one time, where these teams were not used to working together, so hand in hand. And then also the technology, the actual tool that was going to be delivering this to the user in real time across all these different platforms. So with those different roadblocks in place, this seemingly simple personalization campaign really turned out to be a large undertaking as far as the data and the resources needed to execute. The way we look at the foundation levels within your personalization model, so that level 1 and level 2 that we look at those as your foundational moments. So within the time that you're exploring personalization, within your acquire and session and journey level personalization campaigns, use that time to really set yourself up for success in the future. That we're talking about really looking at your technology, your organization, and your experience areas during this foundation section. So on the technology front, leverage technology you already have, like you said, which may not be omni-channel or even have all the features you need at the moment. But use the technology you have to learn what types of gaps in your data you have, what types of gaps in the functionality in your tech stack do you have, what programs are not currently talking to each other, or tools are not currently talking to each other that need to be. Try to identify all of those different gaps during your foundation stages to help inform what you're going to need to prepare for those higher level or more advanced level stages. In your organization, start out working with the team members that you know the data, they know the tools that they're using. They're really the subject matter experts for whatever channel that you're currently are looking to personalize for. And then take note of, are there bottlenecks being created in maybe development or creative or strategy? Where are those friction points coming from so you can start preparing for the future? And then in your experience, use the proof of concept personalization campaigns to test high-level solutions to your business problems. And then create a personalization roadmap that accounts for those goals now and in the future. And this is going to be really key for understanding what data you will need in the future to execute against that roadmap and those goals.
So as your program evolves, you want to naturally elevate the experiences delivered within each pillar or each step, right? As you do this, you'll also need to elevate the organizational and technical capability within each pillar. The quality of the resources will need to evolve, the data will need to evolve, and the technology functionality will also need to evolve. So you have to think of essentially each step and in the pillars within each step, and continue to evolve within each as you move from step 1 to step 2 and to step 3, and also focus on the pillars themselves.
So now that we have a great base, we're going to get a little bit deeper into each one of those pillars. And the technology piece, we frequently see companies consider tool selection very early on in their personalization program, but kind of fail to consider the data that's needed to power the tool effectively and really reach their goals. And we like to point out that personalization is frequently initiated by e-commerce teams or marketing teams, but when it comes down to the cleanliness of data, the quantity of data, when we start talking about data and data management, that typically falls under another team, maybe your tech team or dev team. And once we identify the fact that we don't have the correct data resources necessary to execute on the strategies identified by the e-commerce or marketing team, this is usually a roadblock or at least a speed bump in the personalization process, because we find that neither team is either prepared financially or have the bandwidth to really address that need properly. So that's why we always like to point that out early on, that, that there is that need that comes along with personalization. So the three pieces of technology, or the three challenges associated with technology, the first would be your systems and how they may be siloed, or you want to take into account how your personalization campaigns can actually be delivered across all of your systems or channels. And when we speak to that, we mean your marketing channels, your SMS, your e-commerce, so on and so forth. How are you capable, or do you have the capability of really delivering a true personalization experience across all these different systems in real time? The second would be lack of real-time engagement, or the data associated with that. So going back to your example, or our example with the credit card usage, do we have the data in real time to know when a user opens an email or lands on our site that they are a credit card holder, or if they've, have done something else on our site within a certain time frame? How trustworthy, accurate, and up-to-date is the data we're using? And the third is the quality of that data. Many times we see brands or companies have a data warehouse or have lots of data to use, but that data hasn't been groomed or paid attention to, or upkept in a long time, and personalizing against it would really be not a great idea, because a bad personalization campaign is almost worse than no personalization campaign at all. So we want to make sure that the data we have is trustworthy. In breaking down our technology, we really look at this, the technology stack, as two things: data and then the tooling. And then broken down within those two sections, we have your data depth and breadth, the quality and cleanliness, and the accessibility. And what we mean by that is, what is the, how much data do you have to work with? Is it the correct data to answer your business questions, or fulfill the personalization campaigns that you need to power those business questions? The quality and cleanliness of that data is, if you have whatever data you do have on hand, is it usable, meaning it's clean and accurate, it's trustworthy, someone has been upkeeping it? And then the accessibility: do you have a central location that all of your data lives within, that all of your tools that you need to drive personalization campaigns through are using? So you have that single source of truth when it comes to your data. And then on the tooling side, that's systems integration or tool selection. So are your tools that you, or your channels that you're personalizing through, are they able to work together to make that true personalization experience? And do they have the functionality that you need to drive that personalization experience? With every different tool selection out there, it comes with a different variety of functionality, or maybe industry focus. So it is important to understand what you need and to have the tools that will drive you towards success. And then when it comes to your data, you have 3 primary groups of data, and we're going to get into that a little bit further down in the presentation. But you have your customer, contextual, and behavior data. And your data is the input for the power behind your personalization program, and is what makes up your customer profile. This, along with your tooling and strategy, powers your personalization campaign. So considering your personalization campaign is driven by business needs, any gap in the tooling or the data could result in some missed goals. So this really goes back to that foundational level. We really want to make sure that we're understanding what data we need, we have access to it, it's clean, and we have the tooling in place to provide personalization campaigns that are specific to your business goals. And getting into organization, so technologies, customer expectations of new channels, they really change very quickly, and we want to make sure that whatever organization strategies we have is going to be able to follow us throughout our personalization maturity model. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth now. So the first organizational challenge is the lack of channel collaboration. So this is pretty straightforward. Across your company or your brand, you have different silos of people or different departments of people, and how well do they work together? Do you have an open line of communication? Are you used to working on singular projects across multiple different departments? How efficient is that? The lack of skill or modern skill sets. So with personalization comes the need for certain types of skill sets, or maybe more of those same skill sets. So do you have, is your marketing team ready to handle the influx of personalization work? Your design team, do you have, content people in place to create content for the influx of work? Are you paying attention to your SEO across different personalization campaigns? So there is a bit of a shift there when it comes to just what we'll need to focus on in both the skill set and the quantity of work for each skill set when it pertains to personalization. And then lack of production efficiency and scale. So are we able to take the organizational structure and the skills that we have on place and really move through that maturity model? Are there places that we may find bottlenecks or need to bring in outside resources, spin up a new position, things like that? Do we have the organizational structure to really take us from leveraging what we have in-house now, all the way through, dedicated resources, looking at analytics, both input and output of your personalization campaign, development resources dedicated to personalization, creative resources, so on and so forth.
Great. So these challenges are really a direct result of a siloed organization. The marketing is a team, e-commerce is a team, retail is an independent team. They each have their own tools, their own KPIs, and their own systems. We need to kind of scrap this model, and we need to start thinking about integrated programs versus channel-specific campaigns. So a new model starts to emphasize collaboration and centralized shared data and systems. In this model, the customer story and experience are connected and really woven across all of those specific channels and touch points. So as you start to ramp up your campaigns, you naturally need more tailored content. More segments equals more content. So each new campaign has the potential to double the workload and double the content production. So as your program evolves, you need to think about resource planning and how you're going to scale up over time as your personalization program becomes more sophisticated. So as we look at the org chart, we need to ask two key questions. Do we have the right skill sets, the skill sets of a modern marketing team? And two, are they organized in a manner that's scalable? This model here defines a core strategy team that starts to manage the customer experience across channels. The core strategy team works with individual campaign delivery pods that can be essentially more scalable as your program grows. So you can add as many of these pods as your program continues to evolve and ramp up, and really rely on that core strategy team to connect all the touch points across them. So moving into experience, for all of this to truly be successful, we need to be obsessed about our customers, which also means being data-led. So understanding the customer and really kind of driving those customer insights and data are really what's going to drive success long-term. So some of those challenges around experience, a lot of the organizations we're working with, initially are still providing personalization based on segments. And segments is too broad to really effectively communicate to individuals and specific personas. So there's a lot of misses there. Secondarily, right, going back to that organizational chart that's siloed, we might find one data point in a particular channel and then start to try to apply that across the entire journey. And again, that's another big miss there. And then lastly, as we start to evolve and that program becomes more successful, we really need to get granular about the entire customer journey and those personas, and really detail and provide the rigor for those resource teams to kind of understand that customer long term.
And looking at how we're going to execute on some of these experiences, we spoke about this briefly about the personalization data that's needed. So we have your contextual, your behavioral, and your customer data. And really the way you want to leverage this is you look at contextual as, where are they coming from, meaning the source or the device they're on, the location they're in, things that you can easily identify, usually from your analytics tool or personalization tool. Your behavior data is really what they're doing on your site or in your email or SMS or whatever channel you're looking to personalize against. That's clues into maybe what products they're interested in, categories they're interested in, have they added to cart, things that describe their actions in your experience. And then your customer data, and this is the big piece that really can take your personalization campaign from that level 1, level 2, and really push it through the maturity model. Your customer data is really what you understand from the customer demographic, psychographic perspective, and it's a little bit more about their essence, so their loyalty tier. So are they loyal to your company? Have they been shopping with you for years? Maybe they're always a high-end shopper. Maybe they're always a sales shopper. Or what does their engagement with your email look like? Maybe they never open it. Maybe they opened one last week. So more about their entire relationship with your brand. That would be considered customer data.
So as we start to think about how we're defining personas and defining journeys, we take those key customer data types and then we overlay them across the purchase journey from discovery to burn to product consideration. This is a simple way to think about defining customer journeys and mapping data points. The first thing you do is select one of your key audiences, and then from top left to top right, define the contextual data for a specific journey. For instance, your customer is searching for acne advice on Google. They're using their phone to do it, and then so on and so forth. So you really start to populate that first upper quadrant there with that contextual data specific to a persona and a journey. And then kind of moving from left to right, you fill in those blanks. And, you know, what we know contextually is that person's using a mobile phone. So we'll want to continue to keep in mind that as they're moving through that experience, we need to keep emphasizing mobile-first design strategies, mobile-first calls to action, things of that nature, and really fulfill on that and test that over time to make sure that we can dial that in. Kind of moving down in behavior, we need to ask ourselves the next question, like what can we learn along this journey and, you know, start to test as far as what kind of preferences and things can we learn from discovery across the learn phase into consideration. So we fill in those blanks from left to right. We start to think and ask questions like what is her skin type? What is her specific concern around acne? Things of that nature, and then so on and so forth.
And then when it comes to customer data, we really want to understand who they are. So what are these defining data attributes, and what do they mean to us? How can we leverage all of the known data around what the person is doing with our brand, and how can we turn that into an informative piece to power a personalization campaign? So we're pulling in things like their loyalty point status, and maybe try to understand during that learn section, once they reach that next step in the loyalty tier, what does that mean to our personalization campaign? Can we get a little bit more personal with them at that point or not? So learning or using that data as we accumulate it to really learn who that user is and what that means to our experience, that piece of data means. While we're practicing personalization or going through that personalization maturity model, through each step of that model, we want to make sure that we're educating ourselves on the best ways to personalize against or for our customers. So using this iterative process of personalization, we want to first look at or discover what the problem is, identify the problem, create an idea or a solution that pertains to that problem, and then go into that planning phase. So do we have the right resources to tackle this personalization campaign right now? What does the technical scope look like? Go into that sprint planning section, so really more of the operational planning at this point. Once we've achieved that, go into the development cycle. So we're actually producing the personalization campaign, pulling in the correct resources to execute against it. In between stages 3 and 4, we're gonna run that personalization campaign and then start to analyze the data coming out of it. So with a personalization campaign, we can always keep our finger on the pulse and look at what's happening throughout the campaign. So personalization campaigns typically have that 95-5 split to make sure that we're ever personalizing for our customers is actually producing a benefit for them. So we want to identify, A, is it producing a benefit? Is there any tweaks that need to be made? Maybe we identify a new subset of users out of this personalization campaign, and we can kind of go back through the cycle to finely tune the personalization campaigns that we are providing to our users. Some examples of personalization campaigns for each step of the way. We have our acquire and session stage here. So with the data we know, maybe they're coming in through a specific campaign, we're able to curate that experience on the landing page. For example, possibly if we're having a Valentine's Day campaign and we know that the person that we're personalizing against has a young family, we can personalize the imagery to their current family status. Maybe they're a couple. We know this from another piece of data that we've gathered over time. They've interacted with something on our site. Then we may want to personalize the imagery to that experience. Same with home goods. So perhaps we know that they have recently added multiple things to their cart in the home section of our site. When they come back to our site, personalize against that data that we know. So show them some home related items or suggested items from that category. So we can really use the knowledge we have, the data we have just from the acquisition source or the session data that we're capturing to kind of bolster what they're already telling us they're interested in. Similarly with the journey section, so using that data to enhance their experience on site. So the data we already know. A good example of this is your shopping history. So if they're a return user, they have taken that next step in their customer journey. They're coming back, telling us that they're looking for more information. Perhaps remind them of the products that they've already shown interest in. Or perhaps we do know where they're located. So they've input their zip code previously because either maybe they got to the shipping step of our checkout or we're a grocery delivery store and that's the first thing we ask. Start curating some products that are in stock in their area or are popular in that area. If you have a product that is frequently purchased on a specific cadence, maybe every 3 months, use that to remind your user at that specific time that, hey, maybe it's time to purchase again, with a banner on that product page or through email, to start reminding them that they're at that point in their journey that it might be time to start thinking about repurchasing, or just simply remind them of things that they've shown interest in recently viewed or popular, also popular items. So just trying to match their experience with whatever section of their customer journey that they're telling us they're in.
So kind of moving into that third step there around preferences and starting to understand someone beyond a persona into a individual, right? How are we going to start to complete that picture of who they are at that level? Well, one of the easiest ways to do it is to simply ask them, right? So start to engage in a digital conversation. These are some great examples of, that simple question, what are your interests? What types of products are you interested in? Are you interested in gaming or music and audio? And then hold on to that information so that the next time they come back, we can start to tailor that content and experience to those lifestyle interests. Other things, in a very similar manner, can get into fashion and lifestyle preferences, a whole host of different preferences that you can start to capture and complete that customer picture that you can use later to personalize again. Some other examples of gathering some of that preference-oriented data, little ad lib quizzes, that's something that's become more popular, or these very simple mechanisms, visual devices where we show them a variety of different products that have different product attributes attached to them. So they could be materials or colors and things like that. And just by having, the question out there and asking them to perform a very simple like or dislike, we can start to gather some more data and start to personalize their product recommendations or content recommendations and really fulfill more uniquely on them as an individual.
And finally, just speaking to all of this in the sense of preparing for the future, preparing for that top tier of your personalization maturity model, some things you can take into account just looking at your site, whatever it may be. You can start picking out some things that may suggest an idea for a personalization campaign. And then you can start thinking about the data that you need to power that idea. So for example, if you want to leverage your favorite element on your site to power a personalization campaign, some things you need to think about before you get into the strategy behind it is, do you have the data? So for a campaign like that, you want to know, do I have a customer ID or user ID to stitch all this data together? Do I have an email to actually send them an email reminding them that they liked this product? Do we have the product information associated with that action to tell them which product that they engaged with? Do we have a flag to say they even liked a product? And then do we have the date of action so we aren't reminding them of a product that they liked 3 months ago? And then you can start getting into some of the nice-to-have data, pieces of data like the preferred size that they have, the in-stock flag, perhaps for the specific size or product. So you can really start seeing how the data required to power a personalization campaign like this can start to become very robust. So it's great to have some of that forward thought when you're looking at your site about what types of things you're going to need down the line. And some other examples are if, maybe a customer comes to your site and they're navigating this pants page or these shorts page, and you have data saying that they reached out to your customer service a week ago asking about a t-shirt that was out of stock, and since then that t-shirt has come back in stock. You have the data that is necessary to power that customer service identifier, the reason they inquired, that out-of-stock flag, and the product details and a way to contact them. So these are all things that we can start thinking about on that level 1, level 2 portion of our personalization model to really power us through those last 3 sections of the personalization model to master that. So we just wanted to call that out as it's never too early to start looking at your site from this perspective to understand what you're going to need to really master personalization. Great.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Aaron. A great presentation. We do have not a ton of time, but time for a couple of questions that have come in. One question is, what is the average reported conversion rate uplift across industries when personalization capabilities are applied?
Great, I can field that one. So yeah, results vary, of course, across different verticals and things of that nature, but more generalized uplift could be anywhere around 16%. So that could be a little bit less or it could be more, but standards have kind of put it at around a 16% lift when really executing personalization well.
That's pretty impressive. Okay. We have another question. What type of role is becoming a crucial hire for organizations when they're aiming to execute personalization strategies? Mike, Aaron?
Sure, I can take that. So the marketing technologist is really becoming popular, which is more of a new role that we're seeing, but really is critical and relative to personalization and kind of in charge of optimizing that marketing tactics across your different departments and your technology platform. So someone that's kind of overseeing all of the personalization needs from a technology standpoint and then also a resource standpoint.
Got it. Okay. Unfortunately, we just have time for one more question. This question is, which marketing channel is the most effective in delivering personalization gains?
I'll defer that one to you, Erin, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I would say personalization, especially at the higher levels of the maturity model that we're seeing, really accounts for personalization across all channels. But starting out, we always see e-commerce sites or your website being the first place to start with personalization, and that comes down to the data. A lot of sites have more data associated with them than maybe some other channels, and it has your acquisition, your purchase, your customer behavior data. So that's really the place that we like to start with personalization, and then of course branch out to that more omni-channel personalization campaigns as you mature.
Great. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. If anyone did not receive an answer to their question, the speakers will be able to follow up after the presentation. I do want to thank our speakers, Mike and Erin, and also thank you to all of our attendees. We hope you'll join us for our next CCS presentation, which is titled IPAAS, E-Commerce Integrations for Efficiency, Reliability, and Driving Customer Experience. That session will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern Time today, April 9th. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day.